Hello, this is the Green Corn Rebellion Show. I'm Gregory Harden II, and today I'm here with my friend Trish Ranson, who is the state representative for District 34 in the Oklahoma House of Representatives. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. It's been a nice Sunday, kind of rebounding back from the busy week at the Capitol. So it was nice.
It's good.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Stop what you're doing. Okay. If you like this video and you like the other content on my channel, please hit the like button on this video. Also, go hit subscribe like right now. And also, when you hit subscribe, click the bell so you can get notifications whenever I put out a new video. So, thanks. All right, enjoy the rest of the video.
So first question is, what bills did you propose this session?
So I proposed a couple. One was that seemed to be getting the most traction was the bill that would allow for cities and municipalities that they have to publish their notices if they're doing any business of some sort, and they have to publish those notices in a newspaper. And so what it did is it looked at the ideas of what does notice mean, and it created a duplication. So they have to post all their notices in the newspaper for like an open records type of thing, so that way they're communicating with their community, if you will. But the issue is that not a lot of people anymore are subscribers to newspapers, and so therefore they don't have the coverage that would really qualify for making notice to their population. So the idea was to keep that in the newspaper, to keep that what's already in statute. So it wasn't going to change that, but also to print or publish any notices that they would print on their own municipality website, so that way people can go freely to the website and get that information. We also looked at newspapers and said, okay, well, if you have because sometimes in the statutes it calls like daily editions, and so not all newspapers are daily, not anymore, especially through the pandemic. And so the idea is, if you have print, then you have a online version, that way those online versions would count towards your print frequency during the week. And so like News Press in Stillwater has 3 days that it publishes in print, and it has 2 days that it publishes online. So then that would be 5 days total, and that would be considered a daily, because it's 5 days or more for those types of statutes. So we did that to kind of give the newspapers a little way to kind of have a little bit more flexibility, but also the municipalities to have a little bit more flexibility. We had the Municipal League signed on. We had the Press Association signed on. We worked through making amendments and all of that, and it died in the Senate. So, so sometimes, the bill ideas that you put forth, they can be great bills. They can have everybody on board. I mean, I didn't have any negative votes, no votes on the bills, or either through committee or on the floor. But sometimes there is just a disagreement between the chambers, and so it didn't get anywhere. But at the same time, the conversation has started, and the municipal league, they started realizing like, oh yeah, this is an issue. But one of the big issues right now is that we don't have broadband expansion. And so not all cities and municipalities have a web presence. And so we need to work on that. And we know that, hoping for the ARPA dollars to be able to increase the expansion of broadband in our state. But it also got the newspapers talking too, of, okay, well, what does our business model look like going forward? And how do we keep our our status in order to keep a historical record of things that happen in the state, but how do we go forward and make sure that we can stay solvent in a time where circulation is down. So it wasn't a total loss. I mean, I think we'll pick it back up and possibly do some pieces with it later, and just see, you know, try to find out what was the problem. Because you never know. It might have been because it was a Wednesday. You never know.
All right. And what other bills did you propose that didn't get as much traction?
So let's see. So that bill, you know, that did pretty well. But like I said, it got killed in the Senate. I was the House author to a Senate bill that would allow for school districts, brick and mortar school districts, to accept transfer students into their district for their online academies. So up to now, you know, we didn't really have online learning from the brick and mortar districts. I mean, it was pretty much the public charters like Epic, you know, that they're the ones that kind of took that, and the brick and mortar were like, you know, we're going to focus on the kids that are here in the seats and work with them. And so they really hadn't gone past into the online environment until the pandemic. Then when the pandemic happened, realized that there were school districts, especially around Stillwater, because this came from Stillwater, that were not ready to go back to in-person. But so there were parents who wanted to have an online option so that their children wouldn't go back in person. They didn't feel like the count was right, and they felt like there was too much exposure still. But they couldn't transfer into Stillwater's virtual academy because it says in statutes that you cannot accept anyone outside of your geographic boundaries. So that brought into the question, okay, so what is geographic boundaries anymore now that we have open transfer? Yeah. And we have school districts across the state that have actually put in the work to innovate into this online arena, and certainly they should be able to compete. And I mean, that's been a big topic of conversation, is competition within public schools. And so also with the idea that parents should have choice as to what is the best way for their student to learn. And there was, you know, I checked with the State Department of Ed, the School Board Association, the Athletic Association. And that was a big question there was, okay, if a student transfers in to do online, could they then play sports? And the answer to that question is yes and no. If they transfer in after 9th grade, when they've already established eligibility, they have to wait a year before they can play. But if they transfer in before they've established eligibility, OSSAA says it doesn't matter if they transfer in for in-person or for virtual, they can play. It's not an issue. So it's just when that transfer happens, and different districts offer online options at different ages and different grades. So it would be something that it would be a choice for parents, that if they were wanting to seek online, that Epic wasn't their only choice. And so that bill passed and it got signed. So that was good.
Yeah.
But I worked with Senator Tom Duggar. He is the senator for Stillwater. And he and I were in the meeting with Stillwater Public Schools when this idea came up. And he was looking for a House author, and he asked me to be the House author. And it was one of those funny moments. I'm like, Tom, you realize I am a Democrat, right? And he said, yes, I am aware of that, but it shouldn't matter because this is our district and this is what has come up from it. And you're strong in education, so you should be the House author. So I said, sure, I'll do it. And it was a good experience. Again, not really any pushback other than the question about athletics. That was really the only question that we had from a committee member. So yeah, that was good to get that over the hump.
That's good, because some of the horror stories I've heard from students about transferring over to Epic and then trying to transfer back into like
Yes.
a public school, like I think I think I've heard this from multiple students, but I know I've heard this recently from a student because it was just like so like crazy. It wasn't that a handful of credits didn't transfer over from the year that they were in Epic. It's that all of them didn't. And so
Right.
it set them behind a year and they won't be able to graduate when they thought they would be able to graduate. I think they were a sophomore or junior.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, and I was like, well, that's odd and horrible because you actually did put in the work and then it didn't go anywhere. There's no proof
Right.
of it. And so
Right.
they're having to do a lot of credit recovery classes just to try to keep up, but they're not going to be able to probably graduate on time.
Well, and if they
But yeah.
transfer, like, let's say like a student from Perkins transfers into the virtual academy in Stillwater, they're still within driving range to Stillwater, that if they choose to play a sport, they could do a hybrid model where they go for 1 hour and go to athletics on fourth hour. They could do that. Or let's say they wanted to be in band, they wanted to be in theater, they could do that course, and that would be something that they would be plugged in with the students of the district, so they are a student of Stillwater Public Schools, and all of the wraparound that brings. And I think that's a good thing, especially for community, because I think that's one hard thing about online learning is just feeling like you're on your own. And so then to be able to be part of that community and be your credits being tracked a little bit better, I think that is a good thing too.
Yeah.
Episodes of the Green Corn Rebellion Show are sponsored by Oklahoma Progress Now. Oklahoma Progress Now is a 501c4 organization focused on building progressive power in Oklahoma. Their primary efforts are on developing progressive content for a 21st century audience, coalition, and capacity building across progressive organizations and causes, and working to see elected leaders who are more responsive to their constituents and the needs of the many. Areas of focus include progressive messaging and communications, coalition building and resource sharing, and focused progressive policy goals. You can check out their Twitch live streams, and they go live on Facebook at noon, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Please support this organization. It's a really great organization. It's just getting started here in Oklahoma. Thank you. Now enjoy the rest of the video.
And let's see. And how did you tell me about what all happened this session and how you felt about some of the things that happened this session?
Oh my. Well, let's see. Where should we start? Should we start with scandals?
I mean, we could start and end with scandals.
Yeah.
With this session. Yes.
So 4 years ago, when I came in 2018, we had a new governor. And the whole idea of we should run government like a business, and he should have the ability to appoint directors of the main agencies. And I remember when that came up, and, all of my alarm bells and whistles started going off no one should have that much power. We should have checks and balances. And of course, I'm in the minority. And so that passed. And I think what we're seeing, especially this year with Swadley's, with the tourism, and with the misappropriation or maybe misspending of the gear funds that were, for Class Wallet, as far as underneath Ryan Walters' purview. And then, we think about the spending of the original COVID dollars, the federal dollars for PPE and all of the things that we would need. And that there is some money that's not all completely accounted for, and when you get from that instance, then you get into the tourism instance, and a name happens in both entities. then you start thinking, what's going on here? So that's frustrating. But I think what's interesting, I think that all set the stage for this week calling an extraordinary session. And, when the ARPA dollars came through, the federal dollars of providing for infrastructure, big projects, and we received, I think, gosh, I don't know how many billions of dollars we received on that, but it was like a lot of money. And of course, the projects that came in and all of that was much more than what the money that we had to spend. But the committees that were formed to go through and to vet these projects, to really see, okay, how does this project fit with another project in the same region? Do they have buy-in from the county commissioners, from the city municipalities, all of those kinds of things. And that's gone through the process, and then they just sit on the governor's desk. That, because there's been this speculation and the scandals of where is all this other money going, that I think the supermajority, the leadership, just said, we need to be in charge of those ARPA dollars. And so that's what the extraordinary session was called for this week, to basically pull all of those projects back off his desk, and then for us to appropriate, in a sense, where we put the money out because it's not part of our budget, but it's for those projects. And calling an extraordinary session at the same time that we're in our regular session helps, because we're all there. But it also means that we don't have to attend to all of these things by next Friday, which is the statutory deadline for regular session. So we can stay in extraordinary session through the summer. And we've been told that, it's quite possible it will be call of the chair. And so if we have some projects that, they'll go to the governor like a bill, and if he vetoes them, then we'll bring them back, and we'll come back after next Friday and deal with them then. So that's quite possible. But there is not as much trust between the legislature and the executive branch anymore. So,
and by executive branch, you mostly mean Kevin Stitt and Ryan.
Yes, the governor. Yes, the governor. But it's interesting, because there was that article that came out this last week. I think it was the Frontier, about Ryan Walters, and the fact that he's getting 6-figure salary for his nonprofit job, and then he's also getting money from the state, and the fact that they're so close to one another, and that they seem to have been woven into each other as far as the class wallet is concerned. I'm thinking, that's not good. There needs to be a further investigation into that. And it's not a good thing.
Yeah. It's certainly interesting.
Yes. And, we had, let's see, the House Democrats had hosted a press conference a few weeks back when the Swadley's case finally, really hit the news. And we called for Winchester's resignation from there. And that happened, which is good, because I think that, honestly, if you're running government like a business, and there is money that is not appropriated, you don't know where everything's going, that looks like there's fraud, then somebody needs to lose their job for that. I mean, that's business. So, yeah. And it's going to be interesting to see how the lieutenant governor handles it going forward, because he was the one who signed off on the invoices. So, I don't know. I don't know what part he played in it, but of course he is an elected official, not an appointed official. So, going forward, and with Ryan Walters, he is an appointed official. He's not elected. And I think that's another thing where people are confused by, when the fact that they see him as the Secretary of Education, that they think that he was elected, and he wasn't. And he wants to be. But it's fascinating to me, someone who wants to be the state superintendent of education, public education, that he vilifies teachers and public ed. So it's like, do you really want this job? Because that's who you would be working with.
Yeah. Yeah, it's depressing. I try not to think about that race, the state superintendent's race, because ugh,
Yeah.
we might end up with him, and it's a huge possibility that we might end up with him in there for a whole 4 years, and
Yeah.
it's not a good thing to have. Someone who's not going to be supportive of our teachers in that
Right.
position.
Right.
So what are your thoughts on the abortion bills that have passed in the legislature this session?
Sometimes I think it's personal. We've had like the most women in the legislature when I came in. I mean, we had like 22 in the House when I came in, and
It's more now, isn't it?
huh?
I said it's more
No,
now, isn't it? Or is it about
no,
the
I think it's
same?
about the same. I think we
Okay.
lost a couple, we gained one. So it's about the same, but it's just the idea that the formula for Republicans has been, an abortion bill every session, because then that way they can go back to their voters and say, we worked on eliminating abortion. We passed this bill or whatever. They don't say that it was unconstitutional and that it didn't go anywhere. They just said that we voted to end abortion. And then this when I came on, we had one, then we had another one. And then last year we had like 7. And it was like, good Lord. I mean, how many other ways can we ban abortion? And apparently there's a lot more. And so they tried them all. And so then this last one that passed this last week basically does 2 things, which is kind of alarming. So the first thing that it does is that it basically copycats the Texas bill, that if a woman gets an abortion, she cannot be sued, but anyone who helped her in any way, shape, or form, whether that be a partner or a family member or a doctor or the
Uber
nurse,
driver,
all of that, it doesn't matter. Anyone who helped her in any way can be sued. And it's just, in my debate I talked about how at school you have the group that are the tattletales, and if you feed into them, then it just kind of poisons your whole classroom environment, because then they know that they have power, and then they can tattle on so and so, and it's not a good way to create community. So the whole idea of being able to sue, I just like, oh, that's awful. So that was one problem that is with that bill. The other one is that it assigns personhood at fertilization.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like, whoa, wait a minute. Because oftentimes women don't even know that they are pregnant until much later. And it also brought into question IVF, which, if you're going through in vitro fertilization, I mean, you want to have a baby. And so it's like, but then are those fertilized embryos, are they human? I mean, are they person? And so then, the author was like, well, if they're not in her body, then no. And I'm like, okay, but that is a slippery slope, because that's going to be, have problems. And, and when you go through IVF, they don't always implant, or they don't implant correctly. And so then, then the woman's life is in danger. And it's like, oh, okay, I understand what you're trying to do. I do. You are trying to respect life, but you're doing it to the point of disrespecting life. So, I mean, it's really hard when you're like choosing one over the other. And then, just the whole idea of the possibility of Roe v. Wade being overturned, and, being on the verge of being a gender who does not have control over my privacy, does not have control over my bodily autonomy. That's a really scary thing, because I've lived my whole life being in control of my body. So now all of a sudden I won't be. That's a little concerning. and that affects 50% of our population. So that's going to be interesting to see how that goes forward.
Yeah, it's something because, and I like specifically that you phrase it as they're wanting to give personhood to, um, a what is it called? At fertilization, because the like whenever I have this conversation with people about abortion, they want to say that we don't recognize that it's a life or that it's alive. It's like, no, no, no. I recognize that the fetus is a life, but I don't think it deserves personhood status. Those are two different things.
Right.
Like you can recognize something as a life, but don't give it personhood, because we don't have this point of view when it comes to animals. I think most people who have this position on abortion have no problem with eating eggs. And I would actually say that the way that we treat animal eggs is probably worse than, how we treat human fetuses during abortion and whatnot. But and I feel like people need to recognize that there's a difference between not recognizing something as alive or not, and whether or not it should have personhood status. Because when you start giving it personhood status, and also the other argument is why are they, if they believe that abortion is murder, why are they just having people put a bounty on whoever helped a woman get an abortion? Or why aren't they wanting to give these people the death penalty, or even the woman the death penalty, because they agree with the death penalty if they kill an actual human being? So it's kind of a, as you said before, a slippery slope whenever, I mean, eventually maybe we'll get to a point where they're wanting to add extra penalties to these things. But
no, and that's true. And I think what's interesting too is, with just trying to figure out going forward, what is it that is the end goal? Is it preserving life? Okay. Or is it reducing the abortion rate? Okay. I mean, I think that's something that we need to really look at. What is the real goal? And then address that goal. Because, I've heard folks on the floor say that, that women use abortion as birth control. Well, if that's the issue, then let's address birth control. I think we could do that a lot easier than anything else. But, the whole idea of abortion rate, we can lower our abortion rate if we actually focus on things like family planning and availability of contraception, of making sure that sex ed is taught to our students, making sure that we have parental leave, that we have access to daycare, that we have, the ability and access to healthcare for both mom and child. And those are things that we are working towards, or at least some of them, but others are said that, it's this socialist agenda. And I would say, no, it's a public health agenda. And this is something we need to be investing in, because if we invest in public health just a little bit, we can have huge dividends in the end. And Colorado has seen this. They have done these things, and they have focused on sex ed, and they have focused on access to contraception, and they have cut especially their teen pregnancy rate in half. But also pregnancy rate across the board, they've reduced that. And when you reduce that, you also reduce unwanted pregnancies. And I mean, that's important. And I think that's a valid public health investment.
Yeah. And the other part about them wanting to force women to carry a baby to term is they also don't want them to be able to have health care and be able to have time off to be able to care for that baby after it's born, or even while they're pregnant, if they have, some sort of, you know, health complications or whatnot and have to take off time from work, they don't want that to be paid for. So
Right.
it's like,
And and it depending on where the person is in their lifespan, I mean, it could be they can't go to school anymore.
Yeah.
Then you have affected their earning income after that. And so, I mean, it's not an either or, it's just okay, well, there are a lot of things that can happen within a lifetime, and we need to be looking at this, and how can we let people live with their freedoms, and we all have free will. How can we allow that, but also try to help people make decisions that make sure that we don't have unwanted pregnancies and that sort of thing. So it's been a heavy week. We debated that bill, we debated the bathroom bill, we debated
oh no, what was the bathroom bill about? I heard about this, but I wasn't sure what the details on this were.
Well, this deals with our trans students, and our trans students, it's a very small fraction of our total population. But the idea that if you are a biological male, then you can only go to the male bathroom. And if you're biologically female, you can only go to the female bathroom. Or if your school has a non-gendered bathroom, that be available to you. Stillwater had an issue coming up and responded with the whole thing of, according to Title IX, we cannot discriminate against anyone because of their sex or their gender identification. So when the non-gendered bathroom was available to everyone, they said it's available to everyone. This is not the trans bathroom. This is available to everyone. And that was brought with outrage. And it's like, no, we can't get into the separate but equal range, because we have proven that is not equal. And to have someone who transitions, has looks and dresses and acts and talks everything female, then she is not safe going into the boys' bathroom. So it's basically, and the same is true the opposite. If he is not safe going into the girls' bathroom. And it's just this whole idea of gender, not just sex, but gender of, okay, well, if you're male, then you should act like it, or, if you're female, you should act like it. And it's just like, no, we are not there anymore. And how do we address this in a meaningful way? And unfortunately, there were some colleagues of mine across the aisle who decided they were going to take it in their own hands and present this bill, instead of letting the districts work it out, or letting SDE, the state superintendent, Joy Hoffmeister, she asked the attorney general for a ruling, and he didn't respond to her, but he responded to the Republican colleagues and said, well, we need a bill for this. So there's a lot of things about it that just make me angry. But the end all is that we're going to have trans kids who are not safe, and they have the exact same rights as everyone else to have a safe learning environment. And we need to make sure going forward that they do.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's just sad how that is. And then the Republicans will turn around and say that we don't care about children because we wanted people to not get sick during the pandemic.
Well, and all of this talk right now of these social issues, I mean, I do not think that it is coincidence. Yeah. It is very much let's talk about this, instead of the fact that we are awash in cash and we're holding all of our agencies at their appropriation last year. But we're going to put a whole bunch of money aside to hopefully entice this huge multi-billion-dollar company to come to our state. But we're not going to invest in education to get our students ready for those jobs in the future. And that's what's so frustrating. It's like the budget's not even a big issue because we're making the other things the issue.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming on.
Um,
Where can we find you on social media, and what is your campaign website?
Yeah, so my campaign website is www.ransonhouse34.com. You can find me on, let's see, goodness gracious, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and LinkedIn at Ranson House 34. So I'm on all of the things, and TikTok's been fun.